is Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust that you will consider this your vitamin or supplement for your mind and heart today. Wherever you download podcasts, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom and pass the word along to your friends to also listen and subscribe? And if you could leave a rating and a brief review, it would be very helpful. Today I want to speak about write it down, you'll be glad you did. The need for writing things down, capturing information. There are a few quotes that I love that I come back to. Adam Braun's is one of my favorite. The shortest pencil always beats the longest memory. That's another cause for just write down the information. A friend of mine, I'll give a shout out to Ed Cleveland, who posted this on my Facebook page. The biggest lie I tell myself is that I don't need to write it down. I will remember it. That is perhaps the biggest lie we do tell ourselves. We're convinced we're going to remember it. I know when I was a younger person, I prided myself on having a good memory. And people would tell me different kinds of information or things they wanted me to remember. And I promised them in the moment, meant it in the moment that I would remember it. And then just as quickly as it came, it left me. So you need to write it down. The other thing is that when you have ideas, I remember being early in John Maxwell's career at one of his leadership conferences that actually happened to be held in the little town of Marion, Indiana. And he talked about keeping a pad of paper or a notebook and a pen by his bedside so that in the middle of the night when a moment of inspiration or an idea came, he knew where to write it down. And I remember as a young person thinking, now that seems rather extreme, but I was a little late joining that dance. And I can tell you the reason you need to do that. There have been times when I have awakened in the night with a good idea. That is really good. But I had no way to capture the idea. And therefore, I woke up in the morning, and from that moment to this, I can't even remember what the good idea is. So if there's no other incentive for writing down the ideas you have, is the fact that they just don't stay for long. They're sort of like fireflies, these things called ideas. They land and light and circle, and then they're gone as quickly as they came. And I'm going to talk about different kinds of writing that you need to be a part of, but one of the things right here at the beginning that I believe that writing does for us, it clarifies our focus. Whatever you're writing about, whatever you're working on, and if it involves writing, you have to give your nearly, if not all, your complete focus. So what are some of the ways that you need to write it down? You'll be glad you did. Now I'm alluding to something I'll elaborate on in a moment as a way of capturing information. But another thing that I have become an advocate for is writing in a journal. Now I have a paper journal, but I also keep some electronic journaling going. And what I'm really enjoying, journaling is not my default. I am not by nature a journaler. I am by nature a talker, not a writer. But I've learned to love to write. But where the journal has been helpful, or one area in which journaling has been so helpful for me, is looking back a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, especially when I was going through a really tough situation or a real difficulty. And you know, when you're in the midst of that difficulty, you don't have any idea how it's all going to work out. Now I have the pleasure of hindsight where I know how it works out, and I think, well, why were you worried about that? Well, it was coming to me with real emotion and in real time, and I had not the benefit of knowing what the future exactly held. But it is wonderful to go back and relive the raw emotions and what I was feeling when I was going through the particular event. And then I'm looking at it today from the vantage point of you got through it and it turned out okay. When you read the words in real time of what I was thinking, scriptures I would write down, prayers I would offer, possibilities, here's what might happen. I learned that the process is a good process of just getting down what's on the inside of you, getting it down on paper is really important. Now, I think there is a differentiation between a journal and a diary. And I kind of keep both. The diary is just merely a recounting of who, what, when, and where, and what I did, and where I went, and who I saw, and what conversations, and what ideas. Um, I don't think it's an either or. I think you can do both. The journal has a little more to do than just being a diary, but we'll get to journaling in a little deeper dive here in just a couple of moments. I am an advocate of carrying a notebook around with you. Now, I'm thankful that I live in the era that I live in which there are electronic tools to help us. For there are often times that I'm driving in my car, listening to a podcast, listening to an audible book, and I hear a quote or I hear a fact, and obviously I'm driving down the highway, so I can't write it in a notebook, even though I do carry a notebook with me. So what I've begun doing is you can record a note in your note feature on your phone by just activating it with voice. And then I'll go back later and I'll file that quote or that fact in the appropriate place where I store those things in Evernote. So even though I'm saying writing them down, there will be times that it's impossible for you to physically write something down. So maybe I should expand it and say, make sure that you capture the thought. Make sure that you don't forget it, because I've tried that before, thinking, repeating the quote to myself 2 or 3 times in the car, saying, I won't forget it. I won't forget it. That is so good. I won't forget it. And you know where that all leads to. Yes, I do forget. In the little moleskin notebook that I carry around with me, I'll write down quotes if I'm reading somewhere. Now, I read mostly now, I would say 98% of the time on a Kindle, on electronic, on a dedicated e-reader actually. And it has a way where I can highlight it there and it's stored, and something called ReadWise keeps all of my highlights and my quotes, which are now numbering nearly 30,000 from over the years. But I also am starting to cross-reference some of those things with my Evernote application. But if somebody says something, if I'm at a conference, if I'm in a church service, if I'm even in a conversation with someone at lunch, and they say something that's really good, I just pull out my little notebook and write it down. Again, if I'm in a car, I'll record it electronically. The other thing that I write in my little moleskin notebook, and write it down, you'll be glad you do, are promises I make to people or promises made to me. If someone says we're going to do this, I'll do this. Yes, sir, I will do that. I write it down what they've committed to. Usually I'll do a follow-up text or an email to that person saying, from our lunch conversation today, from our meeting today, here's what I agreed that I was going to do. You could count on me for this, and I will bullet point list them. And then I will say, and this is what I heard you say that you're going to do. If for some reason I misheard, misunderstood, or am remembering it incorrectly, please correct me. And so I need to write it down. If I make a commitment to someone, if I have made them a promise, I have to write it down, and then I put it into my calendar so that I will get it done. Oftentimes people will give me either a business card, or at times they'll write their personal information, their address, their email, their phone number on a 3x5 card and hand it to me. And I can't tell you how many I have lost of those. So I will transfer it into the journal, the paper journal that I carry on me every day. And then I will make sure that I not only keep it there, but I will transfer it to my electronic contacts that then syncs across all of my various platforms. I can't tell you over the years, especially as a younger person, how I had these scraps of papers with people's phone numbers and addresses or emails on it, and it went through the laundry because I didn't take it out of my clothing, or it got thrown away inadvertently as a piece of scrap paper. So you need to write down quotes, you need to write down those things that you promise people that you're going to do, as well as the promises they have made to you. Write down all of the contact information. And any other thoughts that come to me throughout the day, I'll either write it in my journal, my physical journal that I have, or I will write it in my little moleskin notebook, because I have discovered, and it's only becoming more true today, our memory is like a leaking bucket. We can put it in there, all the stuff goes in there, but it's easy for it to leak out. I'm always looking for new and better and greater ideas of how to add some horsepower to my journaling, because it's such a wonderful help. And I'm going to give a shout out to Benjamin Hardy. I'm doing what he has suggested about journaling. He has some tremendous material on journaling, but there are some questions that we should ask ourselves every day. And even though it doesn't change much, some of them day to day, the last couple of weeks I've been writing these in my journal, even for the repetitiveness which drives it deeper down into my heart and mind and soul. And the first question that he says to ask yourself in your journal is, where am I now? Right now. What's happening in my life? Where do I find myself? You know, that's both a positive and perhaps some not so positive news, but not where would I like to be, nor where do I wish I were. That's not the question. The journal is a great place to be honest and candid and to spell out whatever you're thinking or feeling. And so the exercise that he starts us with is just to ask yourself this question and then write out the answer. Where am I right now? And then the second thing that he asks us to list are, what are my wins from the last 90 days? I can't tell you how helpful just that one sentence in answering it is, because many of us, if not most of us, have a tendency to focus on what didn't work and what we weren't able to accomplish and all of the disappointments and setbacks. But there's something with taking a pen and a piece of paper, or if you do it electronically, it's okay, and you just list. 90 days is a long period of time, and at times I have been amazed at the victories that have happened, the wins, as he says it, that have taken place in the 90 days. And it really kind of orients me in a more positive direction of saying, hey, I was able to accomplish these things in the last 3 months. And it gives you some hope moving into the future, which leads to the third question that Benjamin Hardy offers us. And that is, what wins do I want in the next 90 days? Notice he never asks what didn't work, what failed, what blew up in your face. We all know that. We don't need to have some prompts on that. But it focuses me. I've looked in the past to see, wow, that was really some wonderful things that were accomplished in the last 90 days. And then it immediately spurs us on, all right, if this has already happened in the previous 90 days, what are the things I'm working on and the things that I want to see fulfilled, accomplished, and progress made in the next 90 days? And then I just write them down. Then he asks the question, well, where do you want to be and who do you want to be 3 years from now? So you begin to look at your goals and the things that you're wanting to accomplish, and where would I like to see myself 3 years from now? Then I write those down. And then the last question is, where do you want to see yourself 1 year from now? I am sure that there is some proven psychology behind starting with 3 years out and then working back to 1 year out. I'm not sure I understand what it is, but I have found the exercise helpful. Yes, it's great to go out 3 years, and then many people stick there not realizing the next 90 days and the next year are going to determine where I'm going to be in 3 years. So I begin to fill out, this is what I'd like to see accomplished in my life in the last year. If you're needing something to jumpstart your journaling and your own personal accountability and your own personal, am I working on the right things and are things happening in my life, I would highly recommend Benjamin Hardy's questions. Where am I now? What are my wins from the last 90 days? What wins do I want to have in the next 90 days? Where do I see myself in 3 years, and where will I be, and what kind of a person will I be? And where do I see myself in the next year? You have been listening to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom. words on leadership, goal setting, productivity, and a whole lot more. I trust today that this has been a vitamin or a supplement for your mind and heart. And however it is that you receive podcasts, would you please subscribe to Dr. Ron's Words of Wisdom, iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, Listen Notes. It's everywhere. And I would greatly appreciate if you'd spread the word. Until next time, remember, write it down. You'll be glad you did. Leader, you're doing better than you think you are. And until next time, this is Dr. Ron saying, have a great and blessed day.